Before I was the progressive feminist I am today, I encountered many machistas. There were several and many along the way. There was the stereotypical machista. He thought he was above me and put me down. He didn't think I could do anything besides be in the kitchen, but he quickly learned he was wrong. Then there was the machista who would make comments about being such a macho man. He would do everything for me, which was nice in the beginning, but then my own self-power was too much for him to handle, and he got offended. He would hate it when I did anything that could in some way outshine him. I quickly ended that one. The Latin lover romance wasn't worth the constant pestering and bitching. But kids, those were nothing compared to what your Aunt Robin had to deal with. It all started in our usual spot, artisans.
Oh my God.
So your Aunt Robin had a thing for Latinos. She always had her eye on the sexy and smooth one. Sometimes she didn't have the best taste in men, but you could say she had her way with guys. She had this one boyfriend, though, for a long time, who seemed just off to her. He would always ride his high horse around, especially when talking with other women. And when your Aunt Robin wasn't looking, he would flirt with other women. The worst was when he talked to his mother. He always seemed so small and obeyed her every word. But to your Aunt Robin, he was the ultimate macho man, always the knight in shining armor to whisk her away. He would order for her, buy her gifts, and speak for her while she was in the kitchen cooking away. He talked sports, which she loved, yet she never got to chime in. He spent every night out with the guys. That led to strip clubs and much gambling. He held her there for too long. That's when she burst. He was the ultimate machista. This was all before your Aunt Robin was the great newscaster she is today. She was trying to build her career, and she had her spotlight for a long time on News 4770. Her encounter with the great machista happened just before she made her breakthrough, where ABC picked up her investigation of machismo. Here's how it went.
Here on News 4770, we are going to be talking about machismo. What is it, and when will it stop? Machismo is a Spanish word with the root word macho that literally translates to male. Especially referring to a male animal, this term is commonly found in Latin America. A culture of machismo is often accepted as being the reality of Latin American culture. Now we will go to Michelle Rodriguez for her interview with Senora Macha, the Latin American Studies expert from UGA, about machismo culture.
Machismo is commonly understood as an exaggerated sense of masculinity and is often coupled with the attitude that men should display physical strength and aggression. In saying this term does not refer to a lack of respect for women per se, but an emphasis towards aggression as a demonstration of strength. Traditionally, machismo is about the societal expectations for what it means to be a man. One could liken it to the patriarchy's more aggressive Latin American cousin in a way. It was the feminist movement of the 60s and 70s that drew attention to the negative aspects of machismo, linking it to the culture of violence and aggression towards women throughout Latin America. This was the beginning of changing the social connotations and leading many to believe that machismo is in fact the opposite of feminism. This is not the case at all. One is about superiority and power relations, and the other is about equality. So let's take a look at what the research has said about this culture of machismo and how it has affected the lives of daily lives of women and men throughout Latin America.
So here we have Senora Macha here that's going to be telling us all about machismo. She's an expert from the University of Georgia on Latin American studies. So please tell us what you know.
Gladly. All right, so the culture of machismo affects the gender norms of both men and women. Traditionally, it values men as strong providers and the heads of households, and it's often typified by a physical aggression towards women. To contrast this, Marianismo is often considered the feminine complement to that. So Evelyn Stevens published a paper that put forth the idea of Marianismo, and it kind of said that women, though they're the weaker sex typically, that they're spiritually superior and mentally stronger than men. So if machismo is considered this cult of virility, Marianismo is the cult of virginity. It kind of takes from the Catholic values and the places the importance of motherhood and the reverence of the Virgin Mary, Mother of God, throughout all Latin America, and kind of typifies that as the ideal woman, pious and docile and spiritual. So this Machismo, which celebrates motherhood, has both helped and hindered a lot of women in the public sphere and in politics. So if we look at like the most traditional case of Madres de la Plaza Mayo, the conservative culture at the time and the veneration of motherhood that the military regime was kind of like holding up to a standard really helped these women kind of battle that regime because they were protected by their motherhood in a sense. It also is seen in like the elections of Michelle Bachelet as media framing of her as a single mother. So in a sense, it was a sensational thing for her, but it also like helped her relate to changing demographics in the country at the time.
So wait, this doesn't make sense. How can Latin America have a cult of machismo that puts women down yet elects women leaders? Is this due to the effective quotas that have increased the proportional representation of women, or can these two concepts even coincide? Please tell us.
Well, it's really interesting that you should bring that up, and it's kind of hard to say one way or another and like to definitely answer that. There have been a lot of studies on the effectiveness of gender quotas in Latin America, and some have really kind of questioned whether or not they actually improve substantial representation, whether they're really like helping women's issues and kind of presenting these bills that need to be passed that could increase women's equality. But there have also been a lot of other studies that have taken the stance that it's these gender quotas that will like represent this beacon of change to come, and so it'll be a slow change. But if you have women in the political system, then change can come from within. So it's really it's just hard to say as of now. As far as how these two things can coincide, I think it really speaks to more of like the intersectionality that needs to take place in the feminist movement and looking at these two things. And so you can have a lot of women elected, but they are often coming from white elite backgrounds, and people that are most affected and the most negatively affected by these cultures of machismo and the violent effect that they may have are normally on a lower socioeconomic level. Obviously that is like very generalized and we don't want to completely stereotype, but I think it's important to talk about the intersectionality that needs to take place in the conversation of these concepts in Latin America, for sure.
So it doesn't just happen in Latin America?
No, not at all. These are things that we see all over the world. We see them, a complete spectrum. This trickles down, trickles to the U.S. We see a lot of this behavior here. We see it in Afghanistan, as we've read The Underground Girls of Kabul.
So tell me a little bit more about how the Latino machismo has been affected in even the United States.
Interesting. I think that what's really important to take away from this is that machismo is basically just patriarchal attitudes by a different name, and so any patriarchal society in any society that has these strict gender norms for men and women will have a lot of these same attitudes. So it's not a strictly Latin American phenomenon, though we do see it there, and the name is there, and there's the whole history behind colonization, and like it comes from Spain and yada yada. But
for another
I think, another time. But I think that this is something that you see across the world. You see it in just any women in politics and media frames, in societal expectations of what women should do in the private sphere, in the public sphere, just everywhere, man.
Everywhere. It's everywhere.
It's the patriarchy. I'm telling you,
we need to change this.
It's the patriarchy by another name and by like a more Latin American aggressive brand of it.
Well, thank you so much, Senora Macha.
I hope I could help on the way.
Oh, I think so. I think our viewers are really going to find this very informative of just what is it and how it can relate to them, even if you're not Latino. And I think that's something that's really interesting to hear an expert talking about this, and still being able to understand that just importance of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we see it being highlighted so much through the domestic lens, and really it happens just in our everyday lives. It happens in the U.S. like we talked about, and it happens in Afghanistan when women are suppressed to just be these commodities, which they're not.
Not at all.
So I think it's just really interesting to hear this. And like we say, this machismo culture is personal, but like we've said, it's political. And as we say it here in News 4770, the personal is political, the political's personal.
You heard it here, kids.
So machismo still has real consequences for women in Latin America, both in the public and private spheres. Further yet, it has real consequences on the safety of women. It is exactly this that has given the rise to movements like #NuNoMenos, meaning not one less, which tries to point out the femicide in policy and social changes that need to occur. It is social movements like these that have inspired a younger generation of activists and politicians, both men and women, to challenge these strict gender norms that people box in. Though machismo is distinct to Latin America, what it is and what it represents and the consequences of it are not all foreign to the rest of the world.
So girls, as you can see, the incident that your Aunt Robin had with the ultimate machismo story was used towards her benefit in her career. A machista who wanted to bring her down was brought down. Although Aunt Robin was able to overcome her machista, that doesn't mean it isn't a very real reality for many out there. So girls, if you encounter a machista, stand strong and tell him or her, yeah, basta, that's enough. A man is supposed to see you as an equal, not